This is Valley News Live at 5.
Good evening, everyone. New for you at 5. Authorities confirm 5 people are hurt and 1 person is in custody after a shooting at a clinic in the city of Buffalo, Minnesota. It happened at Allina Clinic about 35 miles southeast of St. Cloud. At least 1 person was critically injured and had to be airlifted. There were reports of an explosion at the clinic, but police say no bombs were found. The Wright County Sheriff's Office is identifying the shooter as 67-year-old Gregory Ulrich. Governor Walz addressed the shooting in a press conference this afternoon, calling it a tragic situation.
There is no information at this point that leads us to believe that there is any nexus with any type of domestic terrorism. We are very familiar with the suspect, and I would just like to say I'm very proud of the men and women of law enforcement that responded to assist with this incident.
Authorities say all 5 injured patients were transported from the clinic. No word yet on their conditions. Newly obtained documents shed some light tonight on a former West Fargo teacher who continues to be investigated by police. Valley News Team's Mike Morkin is here to explain. Mike.
Stacy, it's been a week since Ron Thompson turned in his letter of resignation as teacher at both Cheyenne and West Fargo high schools. Last night, the school board accepted that resignation. Well, today we looked into Thompson's personnel file. There's nothing that would raise a red flag. The file, which is just over 100 pages long, includes no disciplinary action against him. In fact, quite the opposite. For example, in 2019, a former principal thanked Thompson for always picking up extra classes, also thanking him for his hard work and dedication. Another comment in 2018 says that Thompson is very professional and is an asset to the school district as a whole. We also learned today that authorities say the investigation has no connections to the West Fargo School District. That was passed on to parents and staff. Other than that, police aren't commenting. We know that they served a search warrant on Thompson last Tuesday and visited with him then. That's what prompted the letter of resignation. We also contacted the Cass County State's Attorney to find out if there's been a report filed for possible charges. Stacy?
Thanks, Mike. Thompson is not allowed on school grounds, and if he reaches out to staff members or students, they've been instructed to let administration know right away. We're going to head over to Chief Meteorologist Hutch Johnson now with the first look at your forecast. Hutch?
Brutal cold continues this morning. Air temperatures between 10 and 20 below zero. And wind chills were bad all day long. And in fact, we had gusts over 20 miles per hour. So the brutal cold continues. Bundle up. Exposed skin can freeze in mere minutes. So here's a look at what we have going on for warnings. We have wind chill warning up north, wind chill advisory down to the south. It is one of my favorites, National Pizza Day. Hey, that pizza stays warm between 6 and 8, but by 10 o'clock it's going to get cold. And if you happen to be a midnight pizza fan or even later, you could have or experience tooth chipping pizza. What does that mean temperature-wise? Well, it isn't good. 5 below in the 7 o'clock hour, on our way to 10 below and colder, with winds that do taper off just a bit, Stacy. Now, we do have a cold stretch of weather, but there is a tiny little bit of light at the end of the tunnel. We'll talk about all of it here in a few moments.
I'll be looking forward to that. Thanks so much, Hutch. 3 people are in jail tonight following an ongoing investigation related to the sale and use of controlled substances. Deputies conducted a traffic stop and search in rural Pine River, Minnesota. 43-year-old Teresa Mead was arrested for violating conditions of her prison release. 49-year-old William Smetana was arrested for having a large amount of meth, and 47-year-old Sherry Smetana was also arrested on drug possession and child endangerment charges. Charges have been dismissed against a local music promoter accused of stabbing 3 people back in September. 47-year-old Jason Grant was charged with 3 counts of aggravated assault after an incident at his business on 5th Avenue North. Court documents say a large fight broke out and several people were injured with a knife. Cass County's assistant state's attorney tells us several witnesses have come forward to confirm Grant's claim of self-defense. Drivers are now being asked to use caution in an area north of Crookston over the next few days as crews clean up after a train derailment. A train derailed last night around 8 near Highway 75 and County Road 252, scattering rail cars along the tracks and a nearby ditch. 9 of the train's 14 cars jumped the tracks. Deputies say some cars were leaking non-hazardous material, but there's no danger to the public. No one was hurt. Today, the Senate opens the first ever impeachment trial of a former president with a debate over whether the process is even constitutional. But overshadowing the procedural debate, constant reminders of the violent attack inside the Capitol, where senators are hearing arguments to decide former President Trump's fate. Alice Barr has the latest tonight from Washington.
In a singular moment in American history, the second impeachment trial of former President Trump began today, and from the start, it thrust the senators sitting in judgment back to January 6th, when a pro-Trump mob laid siege to the U.S. Capitol. Senators, in some cases seated at desks that were ransacked by rioters, now tasked with deciding whether Mr. Trump violated his constitutional oath and bears responsibility for the deadly attack. House impeachment managers replaying the harrowing events of January 6th and the former president's own fiery words just before the riot, arguing that capped weeks of escalating lies and rhetoric about an election he claims was fixed.
That's a high crime and misdemeanor. If that's not an impeachable offense, then there is no such thing.
Today's debate focused on whether it's constitutional to try a former president. The Trump legal team arguing impeachment is only intended to remove a president from office.
We can't possibly be suggesting that we punish people for political speech in this country.
House managers point to precedent for trying former officials and argue that not holding Mr. Trump accountable would set its own dangerous precedent.
Presidents can't inflame insurrection in their final weeks and then walk away like nothing happened.
The former president's lawyers say he was speaking figuratively when he urged supporters to fight, that he was exercising his First Amendment rights, and that the Capitol attack was, quote, pre-planned by a small group of criminals.
Officials say tomorrow the two sides are set to go deeper into the case for and against conviction of the former president. A South Dakota judge has tossed out a voter-approved constitutional amendment legalizing recreational marijuana. Voters approved the amendment in November despite opposition from the governor. Her administration supported a legal challenge from two law enforcement officers who argued that the amendment is technically flawed. Marijuana supporters argued the lawsuit was an effort to overturn the will of the people. Lawyers expect an appeal to the state Supreme Court. Possession of small amounts of marijuana had been set to become legal on July 1st. Sanford Health is opening a new vaccination center in Moorhead. They say this will allow them to keep doses needed for Minnesota on the Minnesota side. Valley News Team's Brian Sherrod spoke with Sanford's vice president and brings us the latest.
The new vaccination center is in the Moorhead Center Mall, right in the old Furniture for Less space. Now, this new center provides multiple stations for efficiency and a sizable space to keep patients from waiting out in the cold for their vaccinations. Just on Friday, the new clinic provided hundreds of vaccinations.
More reasonable in a dedicated space versus a the clinic setting when we're going to be giving that many vaccines and hope to give more.
Sanford plans to receive 1,400 vaccination doses by the state this week. Dr. Griffin says the state has been very consistent with their dose levels. These vaccines will continue to vaccinate patients still in the 1B category, and these vaccine doses are now provided in pharmacies as well. Now, Dr. Griffin also says that spring is the ideal time to see patients in the general public beginning vaccinations. If you're struggling to set up your own appointment, you're welcome to let a family member set it up for you to make it easier. Brian Sherrod, Valley News Live.
Grand Forks is moving on to its next vaccination tier. Grand Forks Public Health and Altru are now expanding to Tier 4 of Phase 1B in the state's vaccine plan. Everyone 65 and older with a high-risk medical condition can now get their shot. More than 4,100 doses have been given out at Grand Forks community vaccination clinics so far. To get on the wait list for your shot, call the number on your screen. Staying on top of the latest vaccine-related news is easy. Just check out the VNL Vaccine Tracker. Open your phone's camera and point it at the QR code on your screen, then tap the link that pops up. You'll have access to national and local resources at your fingertips. Downtown Fargo's Red River Market is on the move. The farmers market is expanding to a new location this season, Broadway and 2nd Avenue North. Market organizers say they're working with the city to figure out how to close several blocks to safely accommodate the market. They plan on shutting down 2nd Avenue North from Robert Street to 5th Street to give the vendors and attendees room to spread out. The 2021 season runs from July to October. We'd like to thank you for helping us support the Great Plains Food Bank. Our 2020 food drives brought in nearly $60,000. That's enough to give more than 177,000 meals to our neighbors in need. The food bank says they've seen unprecedented need for food assistance since the start of the pandemic, but they donated a record number of meals last year thanks to contributions from the community. Don't worry, if you missed out on our food drives, you can still donate at the web address there on your screen. Well, a popular rideshare company is teaming up with a local pharmacy to help with vaccinations. We'll explain when Valley News Live at 5 continues.
And for a change, we managed to reach 0 degrees for, well, the first time since late Friday, as we've been sub-zero in many locations for several days. The stretch of cold and dangerous wind chill weather continues. Hour by hour details are coming up right after this.